Hey, what is going on guys? RZ Stealth here, and in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at in solo queue. Hasn't really made its way over to EU, NA, or any of the other bigger regions yet, but it's a pick right now having a lot of success in Korea, and it's with the Kleptomancy as your keystone, and then taking Resolve secondary with the Shield Bash and Revitalize. This setup just gives Karma a very strong laning phase because Karma is a champion that is actually very hard for melee champions to get onto and really dive onto her and deal a sustainable, really good engage in the mid to late game. And also because we're seeing AD carries become a lot more relevant now with the crit item changes in this patch, because Maokai is one of the best peeling top lane champions in the game, it just allows him to keep his AD carry very safe in mid to late game team fights and allow them to thrive really well. So another one of these kind of like cheese top lane picks is doing very well over in Korea right now is the Vayne top with Kleptomancy. So kind of similar to the Karma top, she's a pick that does very well into a lot of melee top lane champions, especially right now with recent resurgence of picks like Nasus in the top lane for the lower elos, especially with Yorick being played a lot more, with picks like Sion, just these non-gap closed top lane champions, Vayne can do very well into, and she can just very easily constantly get Klepto procs off on them in the laning phase with the low cooldown on her Q. She's gonna be able to accelerate her build path very quickly and just hit a very fast 2 to 3 item spike. And the crit item changes in this patch, more specifically the introduction of the new Phantom Dancer, just gives Vayne an even better 3 item spike once you get Bork, Rageblade, and Phantom Dancer in, and a very hard champion to kill. So moving into the jungle now, one jungle pick that does get helped out quite a bit in this patch is Kindred. So Kindred is really liking the crit item changes right now. Phantom Dancer as a second item after her warrior completion is doing great on her for this patch. And then after that, going for like Infinity Edge, Rapid Fire Cannon, Crit Kindred is doing a lot better right now after the changes. I know in previous patches and in previous just metas for his team in his kit is some of the best for any jungler. He's got insanely good crowd control, really good peel. Because AD carries are a lot stronger now in this patch, he does a great job at just keeping them safe in mid to late game fights. He's got insane Baron and Dragon control as well, so if you get ahead in the early game with Nunu, it's very easy to just look to control objectives and close out games very quickly. So moving on to the mid lane now, Corki is a pick that does get a lot stronger for 9.3 with the recent changes to Infinity Edge along with Phantom Dancer and Rapid Fire Cannon. All 3 of those crit item changes getting buffed in this patch just really helped the champion out, because in previous patches you couldn't go for Infinity Edge second on Corki. It just didn't make any sense because you needed a Zeal item before going Infinity Edge, but the fact you can now go IE second on Corki after your Trinity Force just gives you a really strong 2 item spike there in the mid game, and it just gives him a ton of burst damage for mid game fights. Just overall, Corki's build path is much better now for 9.3. He can also go for the overheal Bloodline with Fleet Footwork setup, and this does provide Corki with a lot of sustain in the laning phase. So in more difficult matchups where he is going to get poked out in the laning phase, this new setup on Corki does allow him to survive the early game much better. And then one more mid lane pick here, Ziggs is a champion that you don't really see a ton of right now. When you think of good poke mid lane champions, usually Xerath and Vel'Koz come to mind first, but with the recent changes in previous patches to like turret plating, the fact that you can now get a lot of gold from that in the early game, running this setup on Ziggs where you take teleport, you also go the demolish, allows you to really just get a lot of turret plating in the early game, and it allows you to accelerate your build path. You can look to poke out the enemy mid laner in the laning phase, look to go for a base, TP back, start pressuring them under tower, get your demolish proc off, get your turret plating, and you can just generate a lot of gold for yourself in the early game with this setup on Ziggs. And then he does actually do very well into a lot of the meta mid lane champions. He does great into Lissandra, really good into Zoe, good into Cassiopeia. Like most mid lane mage champions, he still is going to struggle against assassin picks, but he actually does pretty well into Yasuo right now, pretty well into Zed as well. The only champion I would recommend banning is the Fizz. Fizz tends to do super well against the Ziggs, so as long as you do ban that out, he's not going to have a lot of super hard matchups for this patch. So moving on to AD carry now, one AD carry pick who does benefit a lot from where it looks like the bot lane meta is shifting is Kog'Maw. In this patch, we're seeing way more of these heal and shield supports being played right now. Soraka, Janna, Lulu, Morgana, and Nami make up 5 of the 7 most picked supports for 9.3. So with just more of these protect the AD carry supports being played, it really does benefit Kog'Maw for 9.3. And then Kog'Maw's a pick that in the past, when you think of Kog'Maw, you think of a really good scaling late game AD carry, but right now he actually beats a lot of the meta AD carries in the laning phase. He does actually have one of the strongest mid game spikes for any AD carry with Bork into Rageblade, and then in the late game, he still is a monster AD carry pick. And then another AD carry pick who's very underrated for 9.3 is Ashe. So Ashe with an Essence Reaver Rush right now is doing great for 9.3. You can still go for Blade of the Ruined King, Runaan's Infinity Edge as your core build on Ashe, but if you're just looking to play for a lot more utility in your kit, if you're just looking to be that arrow bot for your team and just provide more utility, then going for Essence Reaver Rush just puts your ultimate on a very short cooldown, and you can just constantly be looking for picks with that in the early to mid game and get your team snowballing. The new PD is also great on Ashe and great on most like a mobile AD carries, because come the mid to late game, picking that item up as your 3rd or 4th item on Ashe just gives you a lot more survivability, and the fact that you do already have pretty good kiting potential in your kit with your crowd control from your ultimate, your slows from your W, and your passive, it just allows you to stay a lot safer now in mid to late game fights. And then one support champion for this patch who is very underrated is Taric, or Taric, however you want to pronounce it. So Taric is a pick right now that is super good in this current bot lane meta, with AD carry being a lot stronger right now. Taric is just one of the best supports at keeping his AD carry alive, providing a lot of utility for them with his shields, with his heals. His ultimate come mid to late game fights is one of the most influential ultimates in the game, and he just does a really good job at keeping his carries alive come the mid to late game. He also does a really good job at complementing a lot of the picks in the top lane and in the mid lane right now. You've got Nasus, Darius, Yasuo, and Yorick as the most picked top laners for this patch, and come mid to late game, if you put a Taric ultimate on a Nasus, on a Darius, if you put a shield and heals on them as well, they're just going to be unkillable come mid to late game fights. Also right now, Yasuo is one of the most picked mid laners for this patch, so he just does have very good synergy with where the meta is shifting in this patch, and just does great with a lot of meta picks for 9.3. So that is going to be it for this video, guys. Those are, in my opinion, the 10 most underrated or sleeper OP champions right now for patch 9.3. So if you guys did enjoy this video, then be sure to drop a like and subscribe if you have yet to already. So thanks for watching, guys. Have an awesome day, and I will see you in my next video.